Okay, so here we are back at our top layer, at our welcome screen and so on. Now, as I've shown you as part of our tour, if we want to create pages, for the first thing we were doing this and I create, is determining, well, where do we want to put this? Now, like I was saying earlier when on our tour, just because I put something somewhere just because I put something somewhere doesn't mean that I can't move it later on. But still, the best practice to keep things logically where they should be, you probably want to start storing and creating your pages where you're intending to be able to use them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to make mine under recreation as well. So the very first thing I'm going to do is just click on recreation so it's highlighted with the color. Now, of course, I'm looking at the recreation page, which is just a page that has nothing on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create all of my pages as children of that particular piece, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to create pages that are alongside aquatics and fitness and programs and seems to play. If I want to do this, you're always looking at the parent and then directing it to say, let's add a child to you. So in context of recreation, I can right click and go to the create menu, or I could have clicked on the three dots here. But in here, I can go hit create, and it says, great, what do you want to create? Well, with what we're doing here, you're going to create a page, and that's the one thing that you're allowed to build here. But once I pick page, it gives me some options. Now, don't pick the blank. The blank has no structure to it. It's just a wide open page. We want all the pages to maintain a sense of continuity with everything we work with. So we're going to work with the ones that are called interior page. And I have my choice of an interior page with a banner or an interior page with no banner. And what this is referring to is on a page, do I want this picture up here at the top? If I choose one and say, yeah, let's do it with a picture, this picture of the two people sitting on a bench is going to be the default picture I have at the top. Now, it doesn't mean I can't edit it and make it something I want. I can do that. And if I choose to do the one with no picture, it simply will start my aquatics right up here under the header. It just gets rid of this picture segment. But even regardless of which one I pick, either one I can edit. If I pick the one with a picture and decide later on I don't want to use a picture, I can go under extra content and delete the banner. And it's doing the same thing as if I had picked the one saying there was no banner. And if I pick the one that says there's no banner, decide I do want a banner, I can simply go to the extra content and add my own banner at that point in time. So no matter what, you're not, by picking a choice doesn't mean you're then locked to that, okay? So I'm going to pick the interior page with a banner. And when I click on it, it says, what a fantastic idea. Here you go. And you can see the template already has it aligned to the left and wants me to go and add this in. Now, you'll notice at the top in this bar here, it says interior page banner. This is the default name because that's the name of the template that we're using. So it gets thrown up here at the top, okay? Now, this is what's going to be naming it over here in the contextual menu. So if I leave it as this, it'll be adding to this layer alongside aquatics, fitness, programs, and seems to play, but it'll be called interior page hyphen banner. Now, obviously, if I never change this, every single page I create will be called interior page hyphen banner or interior page hyphen no banner. Well, that doesn't make for good organization. So this we're going to change to reflect to be the name of or what we want to call the page. But this is reflecting what it will be called here in this contextual menu, not necessarily what is displayed on the page. Now, when we created pages and I create, when you put down the page name, it by default became the heading at the top of your page. So it had to be very specific. I still have to add that in. So in here, I could change from interior page. And what I can do is I'm going to create a new page each time I show you a new component to use. So the very first component and the most important one is a text box, okay? Using text to get information up there. Obviously the most important way because it's how the information gets transferred. So I'm going to call this text mark. So just the name of the component and my name. So that way you won't be tempted down the road to say, oh, we're going to go put all these marked pages out there for the public to see now. You'll know they're mine, but I will clean this up when I'm done anyways, but simply to provide context. Now, I've added that in. If I go down here into the bottom right corner, you see I have one that says save and one that says save and publish. Well, save and publish is saving it and publishing it, okay? Once again, that's that active finality. If I just hit save, I can hit save again, and fingers crossed that doesn't throw an error. Come on. Oh, it worked. Good. We had a little glitch last week when I was trading where with throw an error. It was creating the page, but throwing an error banner. we seem to have got that worked out. Fantastic. So I've now saved my page, but you'll notice now I've saved it. I have another piece down here in the bottom right corner. It says save and preview. This is how I can save it now moving forward for each thing that I do. It's like hitting the save button, but then we'll open it up and say, well, here's all the stuff that you're displaying. So if I hit save and preview, it's going to open in a new tab and say, this is what your page looks like. And it simply says, it's got the banner, it says text mark. Well, it automatically adopted what I had at the top. Now that's the default. If you choose not to add any other headings, it will automatically stuff a heading for whatever you called your page here at the top. Okay, so it picked up text mark here because I called it text mark here up the top. But in my content under the layout, it says heading. I can actually create something different. If I add something to this heading line, it overrides the default of what's sitting at the top and will display whatever this is. So I'm going to change the heading for my page to be Mark's text page. Now, when I hit save and preview now, it overrides the one at the top, and now it's called Mark's text page. So what I have sitting in the contextual menu to find the page could be different than the actual display of what I want the heading to be on the page. But whether I leave it as the default at the top or whether I create my own heading, it creates it as a heading level 1. Now, I know you're probably familiar with accessibility and the requirements because you've used it with iCreate and all that stuff. Do you want me to go over the accessibility requirements and things as we go through here, just as a refresher for people, just in case? I always find people find something that they have forgotten about or weren't observant of because it is law here in Ontario. So would you like me to sort of do it as sort of just how I would if you've never had no idea about accessibility?
I think like some higher level stuff could be beneficial, but I believe for the most part, everybody has done the accessibility training with iCreate.
Perfect. Okay, so just in a
Just
nutshell, yeah, go ahead.
just so you know, I have not done the accessibility training, so I don't know if you need to go into any depth. I agree with Erica if we can keep it maybe a little bit higher because most of them have. And if I really need something in depth, maybe I can go to one of them afterwards.
Well, absolutely. One of the things that we talk about for our Ontario clients is, well, it's required by law. So sometimes it's good to know. I don't have to go into like super detail the way that you can. I mean, we have entire day-long programs about accessibility and accessible documents and stuff. When we work with Govstack, there's really three things that kind of govern accessibility for what editors are going to do in here. So what it's going to do is two of them have to do with the text that you're going to put it on the page, and one has to do with images. So I'll target those three spaces as we move through without going into too much of detail. Just to say, in a nutshell, accessibility is the overall desire or requirement, since it is legislated here, to ensure that everyone that comes to your website, regardless of any challenge they may face, can get information from there. So sort of in its broadest form, it's governed by the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which says basically Canada's a democracy. And as a democracy, we have public domain info when anybody can go and get it. But that was written decades ago when our methods of getting information were to go to a library and check out a book or listen to a news segment on the radio or watch a documentary on TV. That's how we got it. Well, as times change, so did our media platforms. The way we get information out to people changed as well. So we needed to address to make sure that those were covered. So what we did is we came up with the AODA, and here in Ontario, that stands for the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. And it's the law that says any Ontarian, regardless of any challenge that they may face, has to be able to come into any type of media and be able to get info. Now, more specifically to websites, is a global body called the WCAG. And the WCAG says, well, the internet's a global phenomenon, and therefore, no matter where you go, pages should function the same way. So we've adopted that here in Ontario as also part of the requirements for accessibility. So all it's really saying is that all people, regardless of any challenge they may face, need to be able to get information from your website. And like I said, there are two things that we have to be aware of when it comes to putting text in here, and one with images. So we're putting text in here now, so it's a good place for us to talk about it. And this, in fact, is the very first thing we talk about. It's headings. This that we have on the page is something called a heading level 1. Okay, so this by default, when I create this and add it in, will automatically create a heading level 1, whether I leave it to grab the piece at the top or whether I put something in the heading here. It creates something called a heading level 1. Well, what does that mean? Well, a heading level 1 is always on a page. It must be there, and it's the title of the page. What is this page about? So that someone coming to the page will always know what that is. Now, regardless of any challenge that you may face, it's a good thing to have, letting you know what the page is about. So we added in there as a heading level 1, but we can actually add heading levels at different levels through here. Okay. So what we can do is on my page about text, I might talk about several different topics. Maybe I talk about my hobbies or traveling or my education or I don't know, space exploration, whatever it is I want to talk about. Those are subsections. And so when I put them on the page, I usually want to make them bold and big and stuff like that so people can tell that they're not just regular stuff I typed there. So we use different heading levels to be able to display that. So when I put in hobbies, I would create it as something called the heading level 2, because it's a subsection. A heading level 2 is a subsection of the heading level 1, which is the text page. So it's nested underneath as saying this is the next major layer that's there. And I would do the same thing with the heading level 2 for travel and education and space exploration. All of my major headings down there would all be heading level 2s. And the reason for that is it identifies the different pieces down there. Now, as a visual user, I come to a page and I look at those major subsections and I say, I don't need to know anything about hobbies or travel or education. I want to know about the space exploration. So I visually just track down to that and I read the section I want. But depending upon the challenge that you face, it's not always that easy. Now, if I had something like a hearing challenge, well, I could come to the page and read the information that's on the screen and I can still get all the info. And even if I had a reading challenge, something like dyslexia or something like that, and I've learned different strategies, through my education and as I grow, to be able to navigate through those. The biggest difficulty we have are people that have a visual challenge. They can't see what's written on the screen, but the law says that, well, that doesn't matter. They still need to be able to get the information. Well, how does that happen? Well, they use something called the screen reader. And a screen reader is a program that simply verbalizes whatever's written on the screen. So when you verbalize those things, it reads off the page. So it would start at the top and it would read off heading level 1, Mark's text page. So it's going to provide them saying it's a heading level 1. So they know that the entire page is about Mark's text page. Okay. Now, what ends up happening is the screen reader then continues to read. And it reads like our eyes do. It reads from left to right and from top to bottom. So it starts reading through. But remember, as a visual user, I'm just tracking down to the next major subsection that I need until I get to the one that has the information and I read from there. Well, if I'm using a screen reader, it's going to read from the top and plod through everything that I don't need. So they have shortcuts and they can engage the shortcuts and then say when they realize, okay, Mark's text page, that's where I want to be. Well, now reading off heading level 2. So it would say heading level 2, hobbies, heading level 2, travel, heading level 2, education, heading level 2. And when it gets to the section they want, they disengage the shortcuts and it reads from there. So it allows them to skip unnecessary segments. So we're using these headings to create a navigational point for people who can't visually track with it. Now, within my hobbies, maybe I want to talk about that my hobbies are, eating ice cream and superheroes. Well, I'm going to describe each one of those pieces underneath. So within my hobby section, I might have a section about ice cream. So when I put ice cream in there, I will make that a heading level 3 because it's a subsection of the heading level 2, which is my hobbies, which is inside the heading level 1 of the whole page. And then when I write about superheroes, I'll say superheroes, and I'll make that a heading level 3 as well, because it's equated with the same level of importance as my ice cream is. Okay, so and then of course we want to talk about flavors of ice cream. We heading level 4, so we're nesting these headings the way visually we would want to read it, organize it, and we're identifying those. Now, this is a heading level 1. When we work with things like heading level 1s through heading level 6s, those are semantic headings. That's the term given to them. A semantic heading impacts how the screen reader interacts with the page. Is it an identifiable marker that they can travel to? So this heading level 1 is a semantic heading. But I also have this one that says secondary heading. And if I put in here that, this is just a community page, okay, I can pick a size. Now, it doesn't give me heading level 1, heading level 2. It gives me small, medium, and large. So when I hit save and preview here, and I've got it set to medium, it's just going to put it like that. This is something called a stylistic heading. Anytime you're given the option small, medium, and large, the screen reader treats this as if it's just stuff I typed. The only impact it has is visually to somebody like me. The screen reader does not is not impacted as if it was a specific semantic heading. Okay, so we have the opportunity to put those kind of things in there as well. Well, once I've added that in, well, I'm kind of done. I'm ready to go to my main content. All I'm really defining is what I want the headings to be on my page. Okay. Now, there's a few more pieces, but does the concept of what headings are as part of accessibility make sense? And that these will generate, whether I leave it the default one at the top or whether I pick or add the one manually to the heading line, that those will be displayed as a heading level 1 for accessibility. Okay, now I do have the ability to hide the page headings. So if I slip that on, it gets rid of them. And when I hit save and preview now with that hidden, there's nothing on my page. Well, obviously I need to have something. So if I'm not, this says I don't want to use what I have written at the top and I don't want to use a heading here, but I still have to have a heading on the page. So there are times when I can use the main content area to also provide a heading level 1. So there's lots of different ways to ensure that we're putting a heading level 1 on the page. Now I'm going to leave my headings on and use my main content area to bring in a text box because that's what my whole page is about. Okay. So within this, I go to main content once I've got the heading on my page, and I can add content. Now, when I hit add content, it says here's all the different types of components that you could pick. Now, I'm not going to go over all of them because we would spend literally like two whole days just on this. What I want to do is just go grab a text box. So when I grab a text box, it brings it in. It's okay. Well, what do you want to display? Okay, everybody with me so far? I just clicked on that. When I click on the component one, it opens up and says, let's go ahead and throw stuff in there. Well, every element that we bring in here has something called an intro before it and an outro. Now, what these allow us to do is if I turn them on, is it gives me another space to write. And you're saying, but you don't need that because you already got a text box. No, technically, you're correct. What it comes down to is that this intro and this outro are actually attached to each component because some components don't give you the ability to write on them. If you're putting pictures up from a gallery, there's nowhere to write. So you use the intro and the outro to either provide information before the element you put in there or after. What I can do with it here in this context of the text is I have said that my entire page, let me just cancel this off. My entire page is called Mark's text page. And of course, by default, because I turned the page headings, I already have that here. So I've got my heading level 1 here. But what it is that when I get down into the main content here and pick a text box, I want to talk about my hobbies. Okay, well, I can use the intro when I turn it on here. You can see that I can create another set of headings here, all on the different size or the accessibility style or as a stylistic heading. So I could go in here and say, align it to the left. All text should be aligned to the left. And I'll explain that when we actually start putting things in here. Text should always be aligned to the left. Okay. So it is an override, so you actually don't have to set it. The override for global says everything is to the left, but I turned it on anyway. So I'm aligning my text to the left, and my heading might be about hobbies. Now in here, hobbies is a heading level 2 because it's not the main whole concept of the page. It's the first major section. So I can click H2 here. And when I hit create in the bottom corner here and then save and preview, my text box that I have now has a heading level 2 that says hobbies in it. Okay, now here's how you use intros and outros and things like that. In the main text area of my box, down here in the main content area that I have, I'm using the intro to put my heading for hobbies. But my content about pieces are in here. So I might go out here and I'm just going to go grab Google. And in Google, I'm going to type in superheroes. And from there, I'm going to go to Wikipedia. And for Wikipedia, I'm just going to grab this paragraph and it has some hyperlinks already built in. I'm going to Control-C copy it, and I'm going to paste it into my text box. Okay. But this piece about superheroes is about superheroes. It's a subsection of my hobbies. Well, I've used my heading level 2 to say this is hobbies up here. In here, I could then go grab a space, go back up and put in that this is superheroes here. Superheroes. There we go. Now I need to make this a heading. So what I do is just with my cursor there, I can go to formats, headings, and make it a heading level 3. So now when I submit this, because all I've done is I used the intro to put my heading level 2 of hobbies in here, and I put it in a manual heading level 3 for superheroes right here. So when I hit submit in the text box, I can save and preview, and there we go. I've got my heading level 1 telling me what the page is about, my heading level 2 saying the major section is hobbies, and my heading level 3 saying, okay, let's talk about superheroes. And I talk about superheroes, okay? What I can do in here is I could then go back into my text box and I could then create another section below about ice cream. Or I could have a separate text box for the stuff about ice cream. It is fully flexible. Sorry, my wife is just walking out the door. Okay, so we can do a lot of different things here. Well, I've added my heading level 3 here for superheroes, and I'm gonna say this whole thing is just about superheroes. But because I put hobbies up here, maybe I have something that I want to say about hobbies ahead of time, sort of quantifying all hobbies, not just specifically superheroes. Well, I have a text box here, so I might go back out here and pretend that this is a little blurb that I have, okay, all about just generic hobbies, and I can paste it in here. And I can submit and save and preview. So what I've done now is I have my heading level 1, I've got my heading level 2 of hobbies with a little tidbit about hobbies in general, and then go into my heading level 3, my first section about my hobbies, which is superheroes. So I can use that intro or an outro to sort of frame all of this up. Does that make sense? Now, I also mentioned about being able to go in here and be accessible, and that there were 2 segments that are about accessibility. The first is all about the headings. Okay, making sure we have headings here so that screen readers can refine the search and use the shortcuts to narrow down the results so they don't have to listen to stuff they don't need to. The other half is about copy and paste. When I copy and pasted that information into my text box here, I'm copying it from Wikipedia. But you'll notice that when it came in, that right here, the superscript and subscript kind of throw this, sorry, get hiccups again, the spacing off a little bit here. Okay, so so it's going to make it look a little odd. What I can do in here is I can scrub it. Okay, so what I can do is I can highlight this whole piece here. Okay, and I can use the second of our little icons in our toolbar here. I mean, if I hover, it says clear formatting. Now, when I click this, watch the spacing that exists in there with the superscript. It just reframes it and says, let's balance everything out. So that cleans everything up for you. And of course, I did the same thing up here. And even though there's not anything breaking the spacing up, I still need to scrub this. Like, well, why do I need to scrub it? Well, for accessibility. When we copy and paste, we're not just copying and pasting the literal words that we see in the hyperlinks. Yeah, that visible stuff comes over. But there's actually a bunch of invisible tags and codes that you bring over when you copy and paste that exist in the host location. Now, it's absolutely essential that each time you copy and paste, you scrub this clean. And the reason for that is that it can impact a screen reader negatively as part of the process. Remember that the AODA and the WCAG requirements are maintained by law here in Ontario, but only in Ontario. If you go to Alberta or if you go to Newfoundland, they don't have accessibility requirements legislated. They don't have to follow by anything. And the USA is just starting to think about those kinds of things. So what do I mean by invisible tags and codes? Well, I copy and pasted from Wikipedia. Wikipedia is based in Menlo Park, California, which is just outside San Francisco. So in California, they have no specific accessibility requirements, meaning that people can add whatever they want in there, and it is what it is. What it comes down to is I can bring over invisible tags and codes over here that can impact how a screen reader interacts with them. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, let's pretend I have to make a page in English and in French. So I spend the day building it in English and it looks great and this is awesome. And I'm like, oh, I got to do that page in French now. And I look at my watch and it's like, it's almost home time. You know what? I'll just do it later on tonight when I have some time from my home computer. I'll just do it up on Word and send it to myself. So anyways, I pack and I turn off my computer and I drive home and I spend some time with the family, have dinner, relax a little bit. And it's, I do that page in French. So I go to my home computer and I turn it on, and I open up Word and I write the page out in French. And I use all the special characters to put the accents on. It looks gorgeous, perfect. And I'm like, well, I'll just email it to myself. And then when I get to work tomorrow, I'll just open my email and copy and paste it onto the website, onto the French page. So I email it to myself. So anyways, I have a nice sleep. I get up in the morning, have breakfast and coffee, kiss everybody goodbye, drive to work. And when I get there, I got that French page up. So I turn on my computer at work. I open up my email and call it my Word document. I copy it. I open up Govstack. I get the page ready and I paste it in there. And it looks great. But what I forgot to do was scrub it clean. And what ends up happening is that it's a bunch of invisible tags and codes. And what I forgot was that my home version of Word is an English language version. And I copied over an English language tag when I copy and paste it. What ends up happening is when a French screen reader hits that French page, which they can't visibly see, it engages with it and hits that English language tag. Instead of saying "Servi," it says "Cest Levi," and it reads out everything phonetically in English. So we need to ensure that when we copy and paste text from one place to another, and let's be honest, coming from your old iCreate site, all the information you're going to put here already exists somewhere else. You're just really going to copy and paste it into here. But even because, bringing it over, we need to make sure we scrub it clean. So by using the highlight and that clear formatting, it scrubs all those invisible tags and codes out, making sure that a screen reader can engage with the text properly. Does that make sense? And that's all we need to really pay attention to when it comes to text, right? Making sure we are organizing it with the proper headings so that screen readers can engage with the shortcuts, and making sure that any text that we copy and paste, we're scrubbing it clean so that there are no invisible tags and codes that might interfere with how this works. Make sense? Now, one of the things that I can do here is I can add anything I want into here. And I've already got my stuff with superheroes. I've got my hobbies in my heading level 2. I've got my little intro all about it. But inside my text boxes, I have a ton of other things that I can put here. Well, what do these other tools do? Well, some of them you'll remember from iCreate, and some of them are a little bit different. The very first thing we have is view a source code. This is like the HTML button that you would have for any page. If you're more comfortable writing in a programming language like HTML or Java or something like that, you're welcome to do that by viewing the source code and working with that. For those like me who haven't worked with those kinds of things in decades, I prefer just to copy and paste into the text box. But it depends on what you feel more comfortable with. But you can view the source code. Obviously, the second one is that clear formatting. Then we have undo and redo. So if you make a change, it's like, I don't like the way that looks, you can always undo it and go back to the way it was. The next three that we have here are cut, copy, and paste, but I was using the shortcuts of Control-C, Control-V. I just find it's faster to do it that way. Formats is how we get those headings and things up there, okay? Bolds, italics, and underlines. And you may recall from iCreate that we probably told you during your training when you had way back whenever, that please don't use bolds, italics, and underlines. Well, why even have them then, right? Well, it's not that it actually breaks accessibility. What it does is it throws off people that have a reading challenge. Now, the way that a person that has a reading challenge reads is they will pick a line, start a line. Superheroes come from a wide array of different backgrounds and origins. Some superheroes and when they get to the end, they drop down and navigate back to the left-hand margin and continue to read. Example, Batman and Iron Man, and they get to the end, drop down and navigate back. When we use bolds, italics, and underlines, say I look in here and I say fighters is the most important thing in here. So let's make it bold. Well, visually, I know what you're doing. But what ends up happening for somebody who's using those strategies is they get close. Okay, they might get down here, portrayed as fighting evil or crime. And the Merriam, when they drop down, their eye is actually pulled to here rather than navigate back to the end. And so they end up dropping down to here and continuing from there. And they miss whatever's in between. So, and the Merriam fighters costume adventure now doesn't make any sense. So when we use bolds, italics, and underlines, it can throw off how people are able to visualize that when they're using their pieces. Well, why have them? Well, there are certain things where you have to use bolds, italics, and underlines. If you were to write a bibliography or a works cited page, the accepted structure that we use for those things are underline certain things and bold this and italicize the middle initial over there. Whatever it happens to be, changed every year in university. You have to learn something new every year. But anyways, what that is if you do need to use it, they're there. And in fact, when we look at some pages, if we go back to the aquatics page, or really a recreation center is in bold. Well, we said not to use those. If it's a completely encapsulated idea, like a really recreation center, you can make it bold or italicized or underline because it's a singular encapsulated piece. What we're saying is don't use them in the middle of a paragraph or a sentence. so that people can navigate. Okay, and so having it piecemeal can cause those problems. So we have them here in case you need them, but we suggest try not to use them unless it's the entire thing. The next thing is a strike through. I don't know why we have this. Seems to me if you have to strike something through, like you don't want people to read it, you really could have just deleted it. So I'm not sure why we have it, but there it is. Align left, center, and right, and so on. Now you may recall these from when you were adding pictures into your paragraphs. That if you added a picture into your iCreate text box, you could use the align left to wrap the text up around the picture. Now that will do that here, but my suggestion is don't use pictures in your text boxes because number one, pictures function a little bit differently in Govstack. Back with iCreate, every single picture that you put into there might have a specific size. So if you're putting a banner up, it's a specific size that you would have found in your style guide. If you're using the layout builder, the components that we have specific sizes, and you needed to edit your pictures to those specific sizes. And when you were using a picture of choice in the text box, you would go to the editor and say, well, this is the size I want to make it. There is no size editor in Govstack. Now, it doesn't mean that you're stuck with things. What it's saying is that every time you use a picture here, it does it for you. The only thing it can't control is a picture you insert into a text box. Okay. So when you add a picture in here, it will literally display at the original size of the picture. So any picture you want to use inside a text box, you have to size it yourself before you import it into Govstack. Now, that's the only time when you have to do that. But the other thing that happens is when you use the wraparound, there is no buffer zone between the edge of the picture and the text that you wrap up around it, meaning that all of your letters are right up against the edge of the picture, making it difficult to read. So our suggestion now is don't add a picture into your text box. There are tons of different components we can use to display pictures. Use those formats if you want to put a picture in with your text, okay? So we're saying please don't use those things because it just becomes very difficult to see, but they still function the same way, okay? Bullets and number points, excellent for organization. Indents, okay, creating hyperlinks, so that hasn't changed from iCreate. We still create our hyperlinks through there. And then when we get down to the next row, we have anchors. I'll show you that in a little while. Media picker. This is where you would go to the media folder to insert a picture into here, okay? Which is what I'm saying is don't. Okay, we have insert a macro. So if you wanted to put a video or something, embed that on the page, you can insert a macro. Tables. Now I'm going to go over tables specifically in a couple of minutes, but tables are a unique beast in here. Embed, so you can embed code into here, superscript, subscript, special characters, all those things. So most of these you have with iCreate. Now the one I haven't shown you yet is the table. Now setting up a table in here has the same requirements as you use within iCreate, but the setup is a little bit different in the way that we build. But the reason that we use tables here and we say don't use tables here is because tables can be a real nightmare for screen readers. Okay. Now, what we're really saying is don't copy and paste a table because the table creation process here is different than when you had an iCreate or any other program. So copying and pasting will impact how a screen reader reads it. Every time you use a table, build it fresh. Now, building a table, is a specific piece. By building it within here, you are building an accessible table, the same way we had an accessible table within iCreate, but the way we build it is different. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with the accessibility requirements of a table, if I was to take my hobbies and go to like conventions, I might create a mini convention calendar using a table on my page. So I might make 7 calls, one for each day of the week, and maybe like 6 rows, one for the days of the week, and potentially 5 weeks in a month. Now let's fill in where I'm going to be on any given day, and people can work with it. Well, that works fine for people who can visually track with a table, but the way that a table reads out with a screen reader is it would read out like this. It would say table. 7 columns, 6 rows. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Event, blank space, event, blank space, blank space, event, blank space, event, blank space. There's no context to the next piece of information that's being read out by the screen reader compared to where it's positioned on the table. So for people who cannot visually track along with it and you're using the screen reader, they're having to guess as to what you're talking about. So like, okay, I want to go to the 13th one. That would be the Friday on the second week, I guess. They're having to guess. Even worse are merged and split cells. If I'm closed every Friday, I can just merge on my Friday cells and write closed. Visually, you know what I'm doing. But the way a screen reader hits that is it reads off the days of the week, reads off the events of the first week, says closed on Friday, reads off Saturday, rolls into the next week. But when it gets to Friday on the second week, because it's a merged cell, it says to itself, I already read this. So it leaps over and reads off Saturday, but it didn't tell anybody that that's what it's doing. So for people who can't visually track along, whatever was read out from Saturday, they now think is on the Friday. For the next week, they're off by a day. And when they get to Friday, and then next week, it leaps over Friday, goes to Saturday, and they're off by 2 days. So tables are do not work well with screen readers unless you build an accessible table. So I'll show you how to quickly do that. So what I could do is down here at the bottom of my superheroes, just grab a new space. And what I'll do is click on table. Now in here, when I go to table, it says, let's draw a table. So it's kind of like old Word here. Now I'm going to make mine simple. I'm not going to do a convention calendar. Mine's just going to be contact info. And I'm going to do like names, phone numbers, and emails. So I need three columns. So I can go over 3 columns and maybe you'll give it like 5 lines or 5 rows. So I click it and there we go. But I don't have a spot for a heading. You must put a heading on a table. To do so, okay, with iCreate, when you create a table, you can put the table caption right in the box it opened. In here, I drew it. What I have to do is I have to go into here and go back up to table and go into table properties. Okay, I can do it from there, or down here, I can do table properties from this little box that kind of sits with it. Okay, and in there, it says under here that here is a caption. So you have to turn the caption on and you hit OK. Watch what happens is it will actually pop in here and give me a space. There we go. And in here, I can write that this is contact information. Okay, so now I've got my contact information. Well, in my rows, I would put that this is their name and their phone number and their email. Whoop. Now in iCreate, if you hit tab, it will boot you out. We fixed that. So now you can use tab to move from space to space. So in here now I could say, well, the first one is Betty, Betty's phone number. Betty's email will be fake@fake.com. Okay, and I can go down to, and we'll do Wilma for those of us that are old enough to be homesick when they were kids and waiting for the Flintstones to come on after Price is Right. There we go. And we'll say this is fake1@fake.com. Okay, now in here, okay, the name, phone number, and email are no different than Betty and Wilma and their information. I need to identify that those are headings. So the way that I would do this is to go into name, okay, and go back to the top here, and I click on here and I go to cell and cell properties. And in here, I say the cell type is a header cell. So that identifies this will be a header. Well, header for what? Well, for everything in the column beneath it. So the scope becomes the column. So I'm identifying the name cell is a header cell for everything in the column. And when I hit OK, it makes it bold and centers it. Well, I need to do that for phone number and email as well. But in this one, you can just simply highlight all 3 boxes, go into your cell properties here, identify it as a header cell for the scope of columns again. And when I hit OK, it now applies that to all 3. Okay. So now that I've got this, I can go in and I can now hit submit. Now I've got a table. So when I save and preview this now with a table, it looks like this. Now, one of the things is the caption is displayed below it, but when a screen reader hits it, it actually reads out the caption first. Just on display, it's underneath. Not sure why, but that's where it is. Now, in here, the way this now reads as an accessible table is it would say, if I use a shortcut, it would say table, contact information, 3 columns, 5 rows. Name, Betty. Phone number, 555-555-5555. Email, fake@fake.com. Name, Wilma. Phone number, 555-555-5556. Email, fake1@fake.com. It will continue to read out the header before the next field of information, always providing context for someone who can't visually track along with the information. And that's how you build an accessible table. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, so I've now got my table in there. Now, when I'm done, okay, that's all there is to adding something in here. But I have these three little things on my component: a settings wheel, pages, and a trash can. Well, if I didn't want this text box anymore, I could use a trash can and I get rid of it. Okay. This does not send to the recycle bin. Okay. Only pages get sent to the recycle bin. Individual components do not. Okay. So if I delete this particular text box, it's just gone. Now, with that, I might decide to copy it. If I copy it, it comes up and says I've now copied it to a clipboard. I can take this particular component wherever I want throughout here and I can use it somewhere else. This is not the same as reusable components or reusable pods that we saw in Global. This is just simply, I want to take it from here and put it over there. Okay, so what I can do is I clicked on that. Now when I go down to add content and I take a look down here, I have this little clipboard, and when I click on it, there's my text box and I can add that in as well. Now it's a complete replica of that. So if I save and preview that now with it copied, I have my top piece here of hobbies with the blurb, superheroes with its piece in the table, and then I get hobbies, superheroes in the table again, and it just replicated the whole thing. Okay. So that's one way to make your life easy. You can copy things to a clipboard and take them around in different places. But what ends up happening here is you notice that both of them are just called text. If I end up with 8 different text boxes on my page, how do I tell them apart? Well, that's through the settings wheel. But that's the only setting I'm going to show you right now. When we come back from lunch, I'm going to show you how to build a gallery. And within the gallery, I'm going to show you the settings, because the gallery contains every single setting you could possibly have. All other components have bits and pieces. The only thing I want to show you right now in the text box, if I go to the settings wheel, instead of playing with all these things, I could go to advanced, and under there, I can give it a name. So my first one I might call superheroes. And when I hit submit and I save it, what it does is when it refreshes, it changes the name of it to superheroes. So I can keep track of all the different text boxes that I have by being able to name them all. Now I'm going to get rid of this particular text box down here because I don't need to replicate it. So I can just simply click on it and say get rid of it. And like I said, it's still on the clipboard. So if I go back to the clipboard, it's still there. I just deleted it from being actually on the screen. So it's a way to hold on to things as well. Now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add another text box. And in this text box, I don't need to put an intro in because I've already got the hobbies as being the intro. But I'm going to go in here and I'm going to write something about ice cream. So in here, I would write ice cream. And I would make this a heading level 3 as well, because it's the same as the superheroes. And then when I head down here, I could go over and grab my paragraph here. And we'll just pick the same one here. There we go, copy. And we'll paste it in. Okay. And of course, I have to scrub it because it's still another copy and paste. Okay. And I'm good to go. So now when I hit create and save and preview, I've got my second piece. So I've got my heading level 1, my heading level 2, giving you a little blurb about hobbies. My first section about superheroes is a heading level 3 with the table. And then down to the next one, which is another heading level 3, talking about ice cream. Okay. Now, what you would do with an outro is maybe after talking about all the hobbies, you want to have like a conclusion about it. Well, on my second box here, which of course I could go to the settings wheel and I can go to advanced and I could say, let's call this ice cream. Okay, and submit. One of the things I can do in here is when I go into my text box, I could turn the outro on. And in here, I could align it to the left and I could write that this is a conclusion about hobbies, about all the hobbies. Okay, so as a conclusion, it would be at heading level 3. It's a subsection of hobbies, just the conclusion of it. And then in here, I might write my conclusion, which might be this shorter paragraph right here. Copy it, paste it in my outro box. Of course, I need to scrub it up. There we go. And submit. So now I've got an outro on my last paragraph or text box now. So now I have my heading level 1, my heading level 2 saying, let's talk about hobbies, a little tidbit about it. First one is superheroes. We get all the information. We have then ice cream, all the details, and conclusion with a little piece. So I'm able to break this down into sections. And of course, I can add as many text boxes as I want into there to be able to build this out. Does adding a text box and being able to work with the components inside of it make sense? Pretty simple, eh? Now, a couple of things that are different here that we can work with, okay? I haven't talked about the summary page yet, okay? So if I go to the summary page, it's blank. I want to use this later on, so I can create a summary of my text mark page. So what I'm going to go to content and I'm going to copy my heading. And I'm going to go to my summary and I'm going to paste it in. And down here in my text box, I'm going to write a summary, not the full page. I've already got that under content. So I'm going to say this is the summary text for the text page. Okay. Now I can put an image on this that I can use later on. Well, now I'm going to show you how to add a picture on one of these kinds of pieces. Now, how we add an image is universal. If I say I want to use an image anywhere, the same box opens. This is just saying when it comes to summary, let's add a picture. So when I click on this, it pops open our media segment, just like the file manager opened automatically when you wanted to add a picture. And I create the media folder opens up and says, okay, where do you want to put this? So we're at the top here looking at all the media, and there's the existing folders. Now, if you click on the outside of the folder, it highlights in blue. That's just choosing the whole folder. If you want to go into the folder, you click on the name. Okay, now in here, and I can use the breadcrumb trail to navigate around. I don't want to impact any of the folders that you guys already have. I want to create my own. So everything I'm going to use for the next 2 days, I'm going to store on my own. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it alongside these. So all I'm doing is going up here and clicking on the plus button. This is great. What do you want to call your folder? I'll call it Mark Training. Go, and I hit enter. It's going to create that folder. Come on, there we go. So now we've got a folder here on that's all mine. Now, if I have them saved on my desktop, I can drag and drop them into here, or I can click here to choose files. But as soon as you add the first file, you lose this. So once this is in here, you can click on upload from up here. Okay, so now I'm in the folder that I want. I can just hit upload and it reaches out and it says, okay, well, let's go and see what we got. So let's go to animals and we'll pick this guy. Okay, this little corgi flipping his ears around, and I hit open. It's going to automatically upload that into my folder. There we go. There's my picture. Now it's highlighted in blue because it's the one I just brought in, so it's assuming I want to use that one. And it's 1,000 pixels by 800 pixels. And I'm just going to hit select. And now I've added the picture. And I don't have to do anything else. It's automatically sized for that. Well, what do I mean by that? Every single picture we bring in automatically sizes to the aspect ratios that are permitted by Govstack. You don't have to do those things. Now, when I look at the picture, there are two little pieces on it. There's an X and a pencil. If I click the X, it would just remove it. I can click on this and go pick a different picture if I wanted. If I want to use the edit pencil, well, what's that? Well, when I click on that, it takes me in there and says, here's the picture. But you'll notice every single aspect that this can be used throughout the site is already done. Now I say, yeah, but when I look at the 1 to 4, the dog's face is cut off. Yeah, because what it's doing is it's simply grabbing a bar down the very middle here of 1 to 4 is the ratio. But I have this pink dot. This is your focal point. Okay, so if I want to focus more on the dog, I can take this and drag it and drop it to his nose. And when I do it, watch what happens to the pictures on the other side. When I release, it moves everything over. So you can do this with each and every picture. You can move the focal point so that it's all focused on what you want here. And you can move this dot around as necessary, okay, to make your pictures look proper. Does that make sense? Not every picture, depending upon the content that you're using, is going to work the same way, but it automatically sets them up. Now down below gives me the details, but then it says, hey, here's alt text. Now, when we were doing this, I said that there was an accessibility piece that has to be done when you work with images. That's right here. When you worked with iCreate, every time you added a picture, you had to write a piece of alt text on it. Now, when I write it here, it becomes the universal designation. I add it in here. Every time this picture is used, it uses this alt text, so I don't have to keep adding it. Now, what are the rules for alt text? Well, I could put down cute puppy as a description of what's in this picture. But cute's a subjective term. What I think is a cute puppy may not be what you think is a cute puppy. So we try to avoid using subjective terminology. Or I could write in here Champ, because that's the name of the dog. I don't know if the dog's name is Champ, I'm just guessing here, but I'm going to call him Champ. Well, when somebody with a screen reader who can't visibly see the picture hears it read out and it says that the image is Champ, they're like, okay, is it Tom Brady because he won the Super Bowl yet again? Or is it Mike Tyson? Or, who knows, right? So Using a proper noun doesn't work either because it can be confusing. The best way for me to get you to understand how to use alt text is if I asked you to close your eyes and visualize Millen Park. If you've never been to Millen Park, you can't visualize that. But if I asked you to close your eyes and visualize an open green space with baseball diamonds and soccer fields, you could do that. It doesn't matter where you put your baseball diamonds and soccer fields and the vision that you make of that yourself. It's the concept of what it is. When a person who cannot see the picture hears that read out, it will say image, alt text, open green space, and like, oh, it's a park with baseball diamonds and soccer fields. Oh, it's a sports park. That's what we wanted to get across. It's a picture of a sports park. But for a person who can never see what the sports park looks like, it's irrelevant where you place your baseball diamonds and soccer fields. So the best way to describe this particular picture would be puppy flipping its ears. That's all it's doing. Doesn't matter that it's a corgi. Doesn't matter that it's ginger and white. It's what it's doing. There's a picture of a puppy that's flipping its ears. For a person who has a visual challenge, they've never seen what a corgi looks like. So to use the word corgi wouldn't provide them with any kind of context. Does that make sense for alt text? Okay, so I've added this in now. So now when I hit save and close, I've now saved that picture down here with the focal point moved and with the alt text for it. Okay, so now when I use this summary later on, that's already done for me. Anytime I wanted to use that specialized page to use the summaries, it'll pull this in. It's all done for me. Now, there may come times when you have a picture that might have two focal points. When I work with Scugog, I know you guys are familiar with where Scugog is, okay? When I worked with Scugog, all right, Scugog is based out of Port Perry, and they had a picture of their harbor. And on one side of the harbor is a beautiful old lighthouse in the picture. And on the other side is a tall ship with masts and stuff like that. There were some people who wanted to use the picture with a focus on the ship. So they came into the picture, moved the focal point dot onto the ship. And then somebody later on said, well, I'm writing a page about the lighthouse, the history of the lighthouse. So they come to the pictures and they move the focal point dot to the lighthouse. What ends up happening is when you move the focal point, every single place that picture is being used then moves the focal point. So for those people that were using it on the tall ship on their page, now they got a picture of it going to the lighthouse because somebody else moved it. If you have an image that will be used in a couple of different places with a different focal point, save that image a couple of times, but listing the name of it with the focal point. So we would save a picture of harbor view lighthouse perspective, harbor view tall ship perspective. On the one with the lighthouse, you move the focal point onto the lighthouse and you leave it there. On the one with the tall ship, you move the focal point to the tall ship and you leave it there. And then people use it as necessary with the focal point already pointing, even though it's the same picture. So that's how you work with multiple things. Just save it multiple times, but each one of them will have all the aspect ratios already designated, and with the focal point being where you expected it to be. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so now I've got that. Well, that's all there is to the summary, but I'm not going to show you how it displays the summary until I get to the page that I'm going to build that will show how the summary works. There's a couple of last pieces that I want to show you here. Okay, now when we take a look at my page, okay, I have this banner. It's not what I want. Okay, these people have nothing to do with my hobbies. So maybe I have a different picture that I want to use to change the banner. The banner, of course, sits outside the regular area and goes full width. So I know it has to be in the extra content. So I go to extra content and there's the banner. If I click on the banners here, it says, okay, well, here's that banner component. And when I go in there, there's the picture. I can delete this picture and put in whatever I want, but I don't have to put just an image. Now I can actually add YouTube videos or Vimeo videos or an MP4. So I can have moving banners at the top of my page. It will automatically size your picture to a banner size. You don't have to create a big, a regular piece. So what I do is I'm going to get rid of this particular picture. And I said, let's grab my own banner. Now I'm going to go in here, I'm going to hit upload, and I'm going to switch back to Xena here. And I'm going to take this homepage banner. Okay, so this homepage banner is a gigantic banner that has a picture of Xena. That's our other trainer, Heath's dog. And we'll put up there as the banner for this. So there we go. Okay, now with this particular picture, okay, when I hit select, now that becomes the banner that's here, and I can hit submit. Okay. Now, when I save and preview and I go over and take a look at my page, it was just this image is greater than 4 megabytes. There is a limit to the size that we're allowed to put in here, and it's 4 megabytes. So with your banners, even when you have something nice and big, it will not accept you or allow you to use any picture that is inherently bigger than 4 megabytes. So that's the simple limitation that goes here. So this picture is way too big. So what I do is I'm going to go back out. I'm going to go back into my banner. I'm going to go back into here. I'm going to get rid of that picture. I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to upload this. We're going to go back to our animals. And we're going to take the gorilla. Okay, so bring the gorilla in. This is small enough that it will fit. So it's 2000 by 1300. So I hit select and submit and submit. And when I save and preview now, it's not going to give me the blue bar. It gives me the picture of the gorilla. Okay, now in here, because of the focal point, it's now cut off. So I would simply go back in to my banner, into the banner, and use the edit pencil here and say, well, let's move that focal point right up here. Okay. And so when I hit save and close on this now, and of course I should put alt text on there, but for the sake of time, it's not. And there we go. We've just focused the way we want. Does adding a banner onto your page make sense? Now, as I said, just because we have a banner doesn't mean we have to use it. There's a number of different things I can do here. I can take this banner and I can hide it. So maybe I just don't want the banner up right now. What I can do is go to my settings under banners, and if I go to advanced at the very bottom, it says hide from the website. If I turn this on and hit submit, it puts a little you can't see me on this. And when I save and preview with that hidden, now it just hides it. For any component, especially on your homepage, please hide it rather than delete it. Because remember, it's not going to go to the recycle bin. It's going to delete it. And the reason for that is we have built those ones on your homepage to function a certain way. If you deleted it, and then like a year from now you want to use it again, you got to have to remember how it was built, making it a little bit difficult. It may not look the same way. But if I simply just hit it, I can always come back after a year, go back into the settings wheel, go to my advanced, and head down here and unhide from the website and save and preview, and it's back. So you can hide any component you want. Remember, deleting it permanently does not go to the recycle bin, but I can hide components. So if I'm not using something at a certain time, but I will later on, I can just hide it. The other option is I can delete it completely. Now, depends on what you're deleting. Okay, if I go into the banner, if I delete from here, I'm simply changing the picture. If I do it from the step before that, if I delete this from this, I have a banner item, but nothing sitting in it. And it's just going to be, saying, well, what else would you like to put here? But it only will allow for banners to be added here. So not where I would delete it from here either. Where I would delete it from is from here. This would get rid of this entire banner. And once that's gone, it will look exactly the same as if I was hiding it. I just wouldn't be able to unhide it because I've deleted it. If I had picked the original one that said no banner, I could simply come onto the page here, click the add content button because there would not be anything here, and click on banners, and I could add a banner. Does that make sense? Easy enough to change your banner? Okay. So we've got all these kinds of things. We've got the content where we set up the text boxes that we have here with intros and outros. We did the extra content by changing the banner. We filled out the summary page. The last thing to do with this is to say, well, how do we get it out where the public can see it? Well, if I go to my info tab, you'll notice there is no link. And it's because I haven't published this page. There's no actual link to click on. So I actually have to publish the page to be complete with it. So it doesn't matter which one of these pieces I'm on because the save and publish button is down here. Now, if I simply click on the main button, it will save it as what it is right now and publish it, and it's good to go. Doesn't mean it shows up here in the dropdown. That's through the global. I have to add that manually, but it will apply under the recreation menu here. Okay, so if I went back to the main recreation page, you see there's my text mark page. So I need to go in there and I need to make sure it's done and complete. Well, that's save and publish. It shows up there. It won't show up there on your live site. It just does it because I'm previewing. Okay, so save and publish. Puts it out there. Now it's published. Now you notice my text mark here in the contextual size grayed out. Anything you see that's grayed out means it's an unpublished page. So when it darkens in, it's published. Now, I can save and publish, and that will be done. But there's a little up arrow beside here, and it gives me some options. Now, I might decide I'm going to create a page about Christmas today. Okay, get ahead of the game. I get some time. Let's do Christmas page. But we haven't even hit Halloween or Remembrance Day or anything like that. It's a little early to start pushing Christmas. Okay, so what I can do is I can do all the work today, but just leave it unpublished. But what I can do is I can say, I don't want to have to forget about it or designate somebody else or put a reminder in my calendar. I can actually schedule the publishing for that. So I can click on the one that says schedule and say, okay, I want to set a date. And we'll say, we can have it visible, say, as of November the 15th. So I can go in here, switch this to November, pick the 15th, and it says at what time. So I can go in here and I can say, let's do it at 9 a.m. So now I have, well, somehow I got 9:50, 9 a.m. There we go. So what I've done now is I've said, it's kind of odd. Can I get rid of everything? There we go. Go back to November the 15th. So what this now does, I don't know why you pick 50. Oh, because the current time is 51. Okay, so anyways, I would just set this to, there we go. So now I can set this up and I can walk away from it. No one is going to see it as a member of the public until November the 15th at 9 a.m., in which case it publishes, and now people can start getting ready for Christmas. So everybody's working with that. But realistically, I don't need to have this page here once Christmas is done, but Aurelia shuts down between Christmas and New Year's every year for a well-deserved vacation. So the thing is that the Christmas pages really don't need to be up after Boxing Day, because we're really kind of gearing up for then New Year's and the celebrations and, you know, the beginnings of a new year and changes and things that are going to reset. So I don't need the Christmas page there. But of course, because I got the week off, I'm going to take advantage of that and go to, I don't know, Cuba, okay, for some sun. Well, rather than have to take my computer with me or designate to somebody else, I can simply put an unpublished date, and I can reach out to December and say on the 27th at midnight, turn it off. So when the midnight hits on moving off Boxing Day to the 27th, it simply unpublishes the page. It's still sitting in here, but because it's unpublished, no one gets to see it. So I can schedule the publishing. Now, the other thing I have here is publish with descendants. What this does is if I built, and you'll see down the road, I'll have like 6 or 7 other like child pages to text mark as I show you different components. Mark will simply be the parent one for that. If I make edits to all of them, if I want them all to update, I have to go into each one of those 6 or 7 pages and do it independently. Well, that's a pain. One of the things I can do is I could say, take the parent and say publish with descendants. And what I can do is slide this and say, even if it's previously unpublished, because by default it only wants to republish previously published ones. In here I can say, well, include unpublished items and publish with descendants. It will publish the parent and all of the children underneath of it in one shot. So it will publish all the pages. So if you've done a bunch of edits on one section, pick the parent, it will publish with descendants, and it will publish all of them that are underneath all in one shot, saving some time. Now with this, I'm just going to save and publish. So when I say save and publish, you notice it darkens in text mark here, and I now have a published page. So when I go to my info tab, it now status is published, and I have a link that I can click on to go and see it. And that's all there is to finishing a page. Does that make sense to everyone? We build a page, add some text onto it, use intros, outros, copy and paste using our scrubbing techniques, building headings, accessible tables, all those kinds of things. It's probably the most complex of the ones we look at because it's how we get our information out to the public. It's incredibly important to make sure that everything makes sense and it's organized and set up properly for screen readers. The only thing we haven't looked at is the settings, because for the most part, you don't really need to do anything for the settings here because it's just text. Settings come into a lot more play when we start looking at pictures and other components. Yeah, go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah, Mark, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. I just have a question for the save and publish option. When you have that little arrow and you can either schedule or publish with descendants, is there a way to schedule and publish with descendants? So you've made a bunch of changes on several pages and you want them all to go, but not right now. Is there a way to kind of combine that schedule option with the publish with descendants option?
Well, let's test that out. If I go to recreation here and I say, let's schedule or publish with descendants, it's only going to allow me to do it. It's not going to allow me to schedule that. So you'd have to, for anything scheduled, you'd have to set them up independently.
Perfect. Thank you.
But that is an excellent thing that I will pass on to our designers to say, hey, is there a possibility that we can schedule a publish with descendants? That's a very good idea. So thank you very much for that. Now, you notice that because this is a published page, I now have the option to unpublish. So that's how we would now unpublish a page if we wanted to manually do it. Okay. So schedule, publishing with descendants, regular publish, and unpublish are all part of that. Now, that's the basics of a page. Okay, so that's all there is to creating a page. You build the page, you title at the top so that it adds in with the text mark like I have here, and then on the actual page you're putting a heading if it's going to be something different, making sure that you've established a heading level 1 somewhere, and then adding in a main content piece with, in this case, it was a text box where we can use intros and outros and add other heading levels and things in there. We can use the clipboard to move things around, all kinds of different fun stuff, right? And the cool thing I can do with this as well is that even once these are here, if I want an ice cream to come first, I could simply come down here, grab a hold of it and slide it up. And now I've changed the order. Now it's going to be a little silly because it starts out with ice cream and a conclusion, then go with hobbies. So I would have to make sure that my intros and outros are set up to be proper in here, but you can move elements around anytime you want. Okay. There we go. That's all there is to adding text to a page. Any questions? Okay, so I'm going to stop the recorder there because it's lunchtime. Now,